Thank you for joining me today. It's Brian Gubernick, and welcome to the No Days Off podcast, where we believe that every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. Today, I want to talk about David Goggins. I'm going to guess you have probably heard of David Goggins. He is a hell of a motivator. I think some people love him, some people not so much. I will tell you that, if I'm being honest, probably about 90% of what the guy puts out, I think is great. I really do. I don't know if I necessarily want to take relationship advice from Goggins, but when it comes to focus and motivation and drive and perseverance, he's an all time great. I want to talk about one of his concepts that I think, whether you love him or hate him, we could all relate to this. And I think the No Days Off Nation would really benefit from understanding this concept. And the concept is something he calls the Great Divide. And I think it's one of the most raw, honest frameworks for understanding why some people build exceptional businesses and lives and why so many don't. Here's the concept in plain terms. The Great Divide is a gap between people who quit when things get hard and people who push through. It's not a talent gap, it's not a resources gap, it's not even a skills gap. It is a decision that's made in a very specific moment under pressure when everything in you wants to quit or stop. That very moment is where the divide happens. And according to David Goggins, that moment shows up not once in a while, it shows up every single day. So let's start here. Goggins makes a point that I think that most people intellectually agree with, but don't contemplate, don't actually sit with and think it through. It is easy to perform when things are going well. When the market is hot, when your team is clicking, when deals are falling out of the sky or leads are just coming in, when you as a leader are healthy and rested and motivated. Performing is not all that hard. Everybody looks pretty good in good conditions. The divide that Goggins describes doesn't happen there. It actually happens when you're exhausted and you still have an hour of calls left to make. It happens when you just lost a big deal and you've got to head back to the office and lead your team anyway. It happens when you just had a really brutal quarter and you have to decide whether to push harder or pull back. It happens when the business is hard and slow and grinding and there's just no end in sight. That is when the great divide shows up, right there in that moment. And I think that David Goggins is pretty clear that most people quit in that moment right there. They don't quit in like a dramatic fashion. They don't quit necessarily all at once. They just start making slightly different or smaller choices. They ease up. They begin to justify the reasons for that ease up. They tell themselves, "Oh, I'll push harder tomorrow." And then over time, almost quietly, they end up on the wrong side of the divide without ever making one big decision to get there. Now, when Goggins talks about the Great Divide, there's a part of it when you build on the Great Divide concept, there's a part of it that he teaches that should actually genuinely challenge you. He calls it the 40% rule. And he believes that when your mind tells you that you are done, you're actually only 40% done. 40%. So think about what that means for you as a business leader. When you feel like you've hit your limit on a problem, or when you feel like you've exhausted your options, when you feel like you don't have anything left in you, you are, according to Goggins, less than halfway through what you're actually capable of. The other 60% is still in there. It's just locked away, probably behind some discomfort. Now, Goggins built this concept through his years as a Navy SEAL and as an ultra endurance athlete, and by pushing his body and his mind to places that 99.9% of people will never go. What he found, though, is that consistently the mind quits long before your body actually does. Long before you actually have to stop, your brain starts negotiating. And the same thing happens in business. You haven't actually run out of ideas. You haven't actually called everyone. You haven't actually tried every angle. Your brain just started telling you that you have. And if you listen to that voice, you stop at 40%. The people on the other side of the divide, they don't have a different brain. They just don't negotiate with it. Now, there's a third component to all of this, and this is the one I think that separates someone like David Goggins from a lot of the motivational voices that are out there. He is not talking about some, singular heroic moment. He's talking about a daily choice. The Great Divide is not a single event you cross and then you're on the right side of it forever. It's a decision you make every single morning. Some days that divide shows up super early, before you even get out of bed. Some days it shows up at 3 p.m. when you're mentally spent. Some days it shows up when you get bad news and you've got to decide how to respond. Every day has a moment where you can quit or you can continue. Every day has a moment when you could ease up or you can push through, where you can make the easy, comfortable choice or you can make the hard one. Goggins talks quite a bit around that. He's got this whole stay hard concept. He's clear that it's not natural. He's clear it's not easy. And it does not get easier with time. What changes is your ability to recognize the moment for what it is and to make the right call anyway. So for entrepreneurs, I think this is everything. Building something real is never in a straight line. It is a long, long string of hard days. And your willingness to show up on the hard days, and not just the good ones, is what determines which side of the divide you end up on. So, to summarize this and bring it all together, the Great Divide is the gap between who you are on your best day and who you are when everything is working against you. Most people perform to the level of their circumstances. Exceptional people, however, perform in spite of their circumstances. The divide shows up when you're tired, when you're discouraged, when you're injured, when the results aren't what you want them to be. And in that moment, you make a choice. Maybe you don't even recognize it as a choice, but it is one. And David Goggins would tell you, the moment is not an obstacle. The moment is an opportunity, because it's where you get a chance to separate yourself. It's where the real work happens. It's not the stuff that shows up in like the highlight reel. It's in the hard, ugly, unglamorous days that nobody probably sees. And when you think about it, the thing about the 40% rule that I keep coming back to, if you've never been stopping at 40%, and most of us have, that means there is an enormous amount of capability sitting untouched. So if you've been stopping at the 40%, and most of us have, very few of us have continually pushed past the 40% because we may not have even recognized it's there. Now that you know it, it means there's an enormous amount of potential and capability that's been sitting untouched. Not because you don't have it, but you just haven't been willing to go after it. So this week, find your Great Divide moment. You probably already know what it is. It's the thing you've been backing off of. It's the hard conversation you've been avoiding. It's the standard you've been kind of letting slide. This week, don't negotiate with yourself when that moment arrives. Recognize it for what it is and then do something about it. That's all I have for you today. Thank you to David Goggins, the No Days Off podcast. Appreciate you being here. I appreciate the commitment of the No Days Off Nation. Remember, everybody, every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. So let's get after it.